So the situation in Kursk looks pretty bad. I want to talk about that and what exactly is happening and try to shed the fog of war. It's tricky. All right, my friends, it is Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. Okay, let's start here. 1430 Russians off the battlefield day over day. 3 tanks, 7 armored fighting vehicles, 44 artillery systems, 69 vehicles and fuel tanks. And we're seeing that same strange phenomenon where when this number of the casualties is higher, this number of vehicles and fuel tanks is lower. And that number of casualties is actually high, the highest for the month and the highest in about 20 days. And that brings us up to 1,222 average for the month of March as opposed to 1,247 for the previous month. Now, that there's also a correlation here. The number of attacks on the battlefield tend to correlate with this higher number. So here we're just looking at Pokrovsk, 63 attacks in the Pokrovsk direction. So it looks like maybe some meat waves assaults are back. I'll get to the battlefield, but I'm going to focus exclusively on Kursk when we get there, and that's why we're going out of sequence. Okay, 133 Shahed drones. 98 were shot down. Another 20 were lost in location, suppressed by electronic warfare. So again, same kind of thing that we've seen for a long time. Okay, I haven't shown you Andrew Perpetua's list. He hasn't put it out for a while. Here are losses he could identify from March 11th. And it looks like the Russians are getting the better end of the stick here just by a little bit, but it looks like about 1-to-1, and maybe the Russians are slightly having an edge here, and that's not a great day. Okay, so yesterday, you know what happened with the overnight, the 10th to 11th March attacks. Ukraine struck Russia with 337 drones, including 91 over Moscow or the Moscow region. And it was a pretty significant event. I want to highlight this last paragraph. Putin and the Russian senior leadership almost certainly consider Ukraine's ability to both target and cause disruption within Moscow to be a significant embarrassment. I would say, you've got to think that if you're Putin, you don't want this happening in your capital city, because there were fires all over the place. I had to heavily redact the video that I put out yesterday because it was being demonetized. So it also undermines the Russian leadership's narrative of the conflict as localized operations and as opposed to a war. Russia, state-controlled media reporting of the strikes has been minimal, which likely reflects unease by Russian leadership regarding any potential adverse reaction from the public. I'm always fascinated by how even those that are dictators or they are elected in name, even if they're really operating in an authoritarian way, are still worried about potential adverse reaction from the population. It's a fascinating dynamic. Okay. Now, what have the Russians been doing? Well, this is today. Russian missile strike killed 1 person as it struck infrastructure facility in the central Ukrainian city of Kryviy Rih the morning after Ukraine agreed to accept an immediate 30-day ceasefire. Okay, ceasefire is not in effect. So the way that this is worded is a little deceiving. Ukraine agreed to accept it. Now the ball is in Putin's court. And we talked about this yesterday, and I'll talk about this in my 3 big story segment tonight. That's what happened yesterday in Saudi Arabia, and I'm generally optimistic about what's going to happen here. I don't know that the Russians are actually wanting to accept this kind of thing, and then we'll see if Trump actually turns the screws on the Russians. If he doesn't, then we know where Trump is. If he does, well, then we know where Trump is. Okay. Russian strikes hit multiple Ukrainian oblasts overnight. A woman killed in Kryviy Rih, 5 injured, homes damaged in Kyiv Oblast with furniture store ablaze. 36, furniture store, right? Like, this is the kind of nonsense that they do. Why hit a furniture store? 36 explosions across Chernihiv villages. Okay, so it's the same kind of thing that we keep seeing. The aftermath of Russia's ballistic missile strike on Odesa yesterday, launched just as the joint U.S.-Ukraine statement about proposed ceasefire was released. Russian Iskander-M ballistic missile damaged a Barbados-flagged ship. It's the MJ Pinar, which was loading grain for export to Algeria. So the Russians are firing on an on a Barbados flagship bringing grain to Algeria. Another ship and warehouses with grain were damaged. 4 Syrians were killed. Youngest victim was 18. The oldest was 24. Yep, that's what the Russians were doing yesterday. Okay, Ukraine has confirmed the first Russian jet down by the Italian-French SAMP/T system. Air Force spokesperson said that the deployment in Ukraine of the SAMP-T had scored a confirmed kill of a Russian Sukhoi aircraft. So that's happening. And then we also saw a rare 240 millimeter Tulip self-propelled mortar, one of only 40 in active Russian service, was destroyed by Ukrainian drone operators in Pokrovsk direction. I wasn't even familiar with what this was, but this goes back to like a almost World War II vintage. These are, I think, slightly post World War II, and they're kind of older vehicles. There's only 40 in service because they're kind of old, but still, it's off the battlefield. Okay, Poland's deputy defense minister has confirmed that U.S. weapons are flowing from Poland into Ukraine once again. This after the deal yesterday, or the agreement to accept a ceasefire deal yesterday. So that's turned back on, as is Maxar satellite imagery, which has been restored to Ukraine. Now, the problem is what's happened in the meantime. The restoration of Ukrainian access to the GEGD satellite imagery program comes one day after U.S.-Ukraine negotiations resulted in the lifting of military aid restrictions, but damage has already been done because they were kind of blind for a little while, and it does, according to this commentary, it looks like a betrayal of Ukraine by U.S. administration. Reports indicate that Ukrainian troops are retreating from Kursk, and this is after they've been kind of blinded by not being able to see what's going on. Russians have been spotted raising their flags in Sudzha, the main city in Kursk, previously captured by Ukrainian forces. So this is a Forbes article. Retreat Ukrainian brigades appear to be evacuating Kursk. Yeah, how about that? So now, I don't know the extent of it, but it's not looking good. Breaking, Russian forces raised a flag at Sudzha administration building, marking significant development in the Kursk region. Ukrainian troops are retreating, citing logistical challenges. Some units have already evacuated from the region. Russian forces have liberated key settlements, and footage shows Russian flags raised in the city center. Meanwhile, Russian propagandists claim that the Russian army has supposedly taken control of Sudzha. However, no official confirmation yet, but I mean, that is what it looks like. Okay. Russians have retaken control of downtown Sudzha in Kursk region. The major offensive began immediately after the U.S. administration cut off Ukraine from U.S. intelligence, leaving Ukrainians blind. That's kind of what I was saying earlier. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Some of the Ukrainian brigades, including the most combat ready, have left the Kursk region, according to Forbes. And this, I mean, what they controlled used to be much larger, up to 1,300 square kilometers, and now it's down to less than 300 square kilometers. As I understand, they've been really punching a hole into a Russian salient into what's going on here. War is not about good news. The AFU are partially withdrawing from Kursk region. I'd like to believe our American allies had nothing to do with it because they're getting pressure here as well on top. And yeah. So we'll see how this all plays out, but it's not looking pretty for Kursk. The Ukrainians are striking back. Ukrainian strike on a Russian military base in Kozyrivka, Kursk region. Reportedly, it was HIMARS that did the damage here. That's 21 kilometers northeast of Sudzha. And then we had this incident that just happened a couple of days ago. There were Russian soldiers fed into a gas pipeline. The gas had been turned off, but still there was no ventilation, no gas masks. 6 days underground without oxygen or water. 800 people went in. Only a company, about 100, came out. So first methane poisoning, and then they were hit with cluster munitions. And these are some of the soldiers. This Preston Stewart posting some of the Russian soldiers in the Kursk pipeline waiting for the order to go above ground and to begin the attack. And yeah, I mean, just imagine what that would be like if you were just waiting for that. Okay. Okay, total drone manufacturing in the U.S. is about 100,000 units. In Ukraine, it's 2 million units, and it's on track to be 4 million units. And the quality is it's not just quantity, it's the quality of the drone units as well. So the U.S. is now reaching out to, America's turning to Ukraine to build better drones. So Silicon Valley is tapping into the know-how of war-trained drone makers. No U.S. company is keeping up with Ukraine. Turns out no American company can keep up with Ukraine. America turns to Ukraine for help to create better drones. According to the Wall Street Journal, American drone technology has proven disappointing on the battlefield. So startups have turned to Ukrainian manufacturers to create more sophisticated combat-tested UAVs for the U.S. military. Ironic, isn't it? Okay, yesterday I was talking about Elon Musk blames the X attack on Ukraine. I talked about this in just a brief video yesterday. It was only about 4 minutes long. And so I was the day before, I was like, what's going on with Twitter? I thought something was wrong with my computer because Twitter wasn't coming up. Well, it was a cyber attack. And then we saw this from Representative Jack Kimball saying, if Ukraine did attack Twitter, as Elon Musk said, this is very serious. I invite Ukraine to conduct negotiations with me so that we can bring peace to Twitter. Unfortunately, Elon holds no cards and doesn't own a suit. So we expect Elon will have to give up a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's clever. Okay, and Ukrainians are testing new drone bombs. Look at this thing. I don't know that I would want to be on the receiving end of whatever that is, but this is impressive. I mean, they've been able to do this kind of thing on a small scale with smaller munitions, like a grenade or something along those lines. But yeah, that's not going to work out well for whoever's on the receiving end of that thing. And then finally, my friends, tonight, this is Darth Putin. Tonight, Ukraine will show how much they do not want a ceasefire when I bomb. And he has a survey of when he bombs what, an apartment block or a hospital or Chernobyl or a grain store. I'm going to go with the apartment block on the survey just because apartment blocks are going to be the most common. But yeah. Okay, that's all that I have, my friends. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.